Right, since Aleksib has joined Na'Vi, one of the biggest teams in the world, and formerly a team where you had to speak Russian to join it, but now it's an international lineup, instead of people being hyped, because people always underrate Aleksib, the same tired old narrative has been wheeled out and repeated on Reddit by a million morons who know nothing about Aleksib, have never heard the comms, know nothing about his game, that he's a micromanager. And ever since his time in OG, this has been the narrative propagated, which is then, by the way, not just assumed that, right, he likes to micromanage people or he can. No, it's that he only micromanages. It's a static narrative and he has never changed. He is the same player from ENT to OG to NIP to G2 in between and to Na'Vi now. It's just the same player because that's what they do to all IGLs. They just put static narratives on them. So, for example, because they heard about Karrigan in the Superstar FaZe Clan lineup, and then the fact that he was a genius in Mouse, and now he's working with these other people and brought back to the top level, Karrigan uses a loose style. Now, some people really think that means Nico go kill. That's all he does. Sit back and go, Nico go kill, Rop, slurk and get a clutch, Brokey, win 1v2. They think that's all he does. They think Glaive, he just has a structure style, doesn't he? Everything's a genius strat, him and Zonic, and they've just already planned out the whole game plan before, and they do exactly this, but because they execute it, nobody can stop them. Nothing else going on there, though. Never mid-rounds, never switches it up, never changes the closer, never has to, like, go for a hard force entry himself that he didn't mean it within the strat, and then change up on the fly what he's doing. MSL, well, he's like old existence, they say. He just executes from spawn. He just comes out. You have to do exactly the strat on exactly the timings. That's all there is. It's 2015 still. He's never changed 1 second at one iota. He's never even understood or updated his conception of CSGO. Because after all, how could these in-game leaders who've won championships and beaten the best teams in the world, how could any of these guys ever know as much as a Redditor or someone who uses HLTV.org and listens to interviews? I mean, they're the real geniuses, sort of. I mean, interviews aren't even just biased opinion, right? Interviews are like accessing the Akashic record. Not least, by the way, interviews, they never say anything publicly that they don't mean or keep things secret or play it coy, right? Meanwhile, privately, I can talk to all these people. I can watch the game. I've heard the comms. I know what's going on. Then, since it's static, he does this all the time, micromanagers, with every team and every player. And since his time in G2 didn't bring that many big results, he got the Katowice foul, but that's about it. Not really relevant at the majors, didn't do much at Blast. What that means is, the assumption's obvious, isn't it? He was trying to micromanage Nico. It didn't work at all. And Monacy got better under Huxley, so that's all Huxley. So obviously Aleksib wasn't good. He's a fraud. He always was. He can only micromanage people. That's the logic that we're going with, right? The problem with that, of course, and this is why I gave those other examples of great in-game leaders who won championships, is in-game leaders call according to their personnel. It would be like saying a Formula One driver only drives one way, no matter what car, what team, and what teammate he has. Of course not. That's just, it's going to depend what you're working with and who you're working with, and if they fit your vision or if they don't, and if you have to give in to them or they have to give in to you. So if Karrigan, back in the day, was in TSM with the Astralis core, he played with structure. He played a very different game individually and team-wise than he does in FaZe, Mouse Spots, and then later FaZe again. Look at those players and how they've played in all their teams. They've always been a team with structure around them, with set roles and people doing certain things with utility and certain CT rotations. When Karrigan had a superstar, one of the craziest Galacticos lineups ever, where his stars were Nico, Guardian, and Rain, and then he's got Olaf just coming in at the back. Yeah, guess what? He's going to give those stars a lot of free space. He's going to let Guardian get the pick he wants. He's going to let Nico, especially Nico, go and do what he wants. Now, he's not going to say Nico go kill, but he's going to let Nico work within his space and find his openings and take his duels. And he's going to help set him up when he can. And he's going to back him up when he can. They're going to rotate when they can. But otherwise, they're going to let Nico figure that out because nobody can tell Nico how to do those entries or how to do the right lurk like Nico himself can. It's also why Nico IGLing was still able to keep his game going when he was the IGL phase, even though they're a worse team. It's one of the reasons, by the way, why I think Nico was a fool to let Karrigan go. I don't think he'll ever play with another in-game leader that good again. The joke is he had one in Aleksib, and he's gone too. It's why, in my opinion, the idea that like, oh, Aleksib couldn't IGL Nico, well, by that logic, Karrigan couldn't, and he's goated, mate. Nexa could, right? Yeah, because he's best pals. Yeah, I wonder why he can do it, why he's not getting complained on. And then you go years back, and he used to be the IGL in Mouse too, when he was the least experienced player on some level. So give me a break on that whole topic. And then he added Dren, and he had Neo. These guys have won majors, right? Some of them were secondary callers, primary callers. Magically, it doesn't work as well as when Nico had Carrigan did it. Everyone gets booted. Saying like an IGL didn't work with Nico is saying like, what, do they breathe air as well and drink water and like to go out in the sun? Give me a fucking Yeah, no shit. Unless they're his pal, apparently they don't get away with it. That's just one of the weird idiosyncrasies of Nico. But luckily, I've heard Aleksib's comms when he was in OG. I actually know what some of his teammates thought of him in a bunch of his different teams. And if you look at his personnel, we'll talk about the personnel first, then I'll tell you some insights from some of the people who've played with him behind the scenes privately when there's no cameras on. So let's look at his personnel for a second and see why he might micromanage sometimes. So the original OG lineup, he had Issa, who I can tell you is a fucking moron. All he has is some aim, and then when they're playing online, he's playing on 70 ping from Jordan. This is a guy on CT side. I actually realised, hey, maybe NBK does call CT sides. I thought that was nothing, but I saw how he would have to call the setups in the site and tell them when to crossfire, when to go in, when I'm going to flash for you, when to hold back. So on T side, come on, of course someone like Aleksib has to micro someone like Issa to some degree. The guy doesn't have the cerebral brain power to actually micro himself. Then he had Mantu as his primary AWPer. Normally, you want to give the primary AWPers some space, right? Mantu had never been a primary AWPer. He wasn't the primary AWPer in alternate attacks before this. He took over that role in this era, and I've told you, tier 1 AWPer is the biggest mismatch in the game when one of them's better than the other one, especially if one's way better, like a Zero and a Device and a Simple. So when you have someone who's just becoming a primary AWPer, they're often going to need a lot of input. They're going to need their IGL to tell them where to be and when to take a shot and when to pull back. Think of Tosh's comments recently, if you go look them up on Reddit, about contrasting Shuey when he was in the Mouse NXT Academy team and Dexter on the main Mouse team. You might think, oh, Tosh's been underwhelming. Yeah, because apparently Toshi thought you could be a star AWPer and have the IGL just tell you when to do everything and when to peek and when not, and then when to move and then when to rotate. He thought they just microed you. He thought that was just what you did. Apparently that's what the Shuey guy did for him, and he's complaining that Dexter didn't do that, because Dexter probably thought, hey, he can hit some good shots. He's a big boy. He can take care of the AWP. Some players need micromanaging. Now, you might think, well, how could Valde and MBK need micromanaging? I mean, they have their own ideas, right? That can be a part of a problem. Sometimes, and I heard this on the comms, they're trying to just get their ideas in. So you got to overrule them, or you got to disagree with them and say no, and we're not going to do that. Or tell them, like, we're short circuiting what your idea, which I initially was going to go for, but it's not working. I've got the read. It doesn't work there. And then lastly, in that era of OG, the firepower was so lacking. He had to set him up. He had to set himself up sometimes. He had to take spots that were fragging spots on CT side sometimes, because otherwise no one else is going to have the read for the game and the fragging, because he's already got his stars elsewhere and they need some attention. Sometimes in IGL, you just say, I'll just do it myself if it's that hard. If it's going to take some trouble out of this, I'll take the flak. I'll pick up the slack. You just do something that works for you. Then he was in G2. You had Modesty, right? Modesty had never played a tier 1 LAN when Aleksib got him, you know that. And their first one, they made the grand final of. Now, obviously, you're going to have to give him some direction, aren't you, early on? You're going to have to get him set up to some degree. Yeah, he's looked way better under Huxley. He's also much more experienced under Huxley relative to Aleksib. And he plays a JKS now, not Jax. There's another interesting angle, right? And quite frankly, Modesty still sometimes looks a little bit out of place, even under Huxley. Looks like sometimes maybe he gets the freedom, doesn't always know what to do with it. Sometimes a bit too passive, doesn't know if he should go aggressive. CT side's a different story. Now, here's where having teammates and coaches you can talk to helps you, because I'll give you some insight from people who've played with Aleksib and coached him. So in Ents, he was good at microing people. Aerial's the example I was given. Taking map control, etc. I'll just throw this in there. So the idea is, you go here, okay, I'll flash you in there. That's why Aerial looked way better under Aleksib than he ever did after that. The other name, who was a star, was Sergey. All I'll tell you is this, go look at Sergey's level before Aleksib. Go look at him after Aleksib. He was a HLTV top 20 player under Aleksib. After that, he was irrelevant and even left the game. Then, as by the way, as far as I know, he's more of a loose IGL. Then the whole notion that he's like too controlling, the Ents guys, they don't agree with that. They say he's a good team player who plays for the round win, not the frag, which they say is a key attribute. He's not selfish in that sense. He's not trying to make himself look good. He's actually trying to always make the round outcome a win and do what's best for the team according to his understanding of the game. They say he believes in his strats, he believes in his system to the extent that it means that he thinks it's going to work and he'll give it chances to work and he'll still won't give up early on if a couple of times it doesn't go his way. Now, they said also that could be his weakness. Sometimes he could be a little bit stubborn. Sometimes maybe he didn't always adapt when things were going badly and his feel for the game was a bit off or someone's underperforming. Now, in OG, similar story. I've heard his big strength is reading the opponent. He has very good understanding of the fundamentals of the game. He knows the reactions and the rotations of different teams and different players that he scouted out. His weakness, yeah, you know what? It's being a bit stubborn, not always totally open to input if he doesn't think the person's made a good case or it goes against like his read and his perspective. Now, they did say he is very good at calming, explaining strats, like actually making people know what you need to do and what his read on the game is and what they're going to attempt to do now. They said he can tilt a bit, which isn't so great for a team captain. That's maybe something he should work on a little bit. Now, they did say, and I think it's a pretty telling line, that if he improved his weaknesses, that he wouldn't just be a very good IGL, he would be the perfect IGL for them to play with. And that he adjusts to his players around him, that he micromanaged way less when Flames and Nico came to the team. Remember, Flames was like a young star with crazy aim. Then you got Nico, who's already played with MSL, played with veterans, had big success and won championships. He doesn't need to micromanage these guys. These guys know what their job is. And I've also been told he knows when to be the micromanager. He knows when it's appropriate and he knows when it isn't. And they, quite frankly, by the way, the OG guys, they just think Nip and G2 were bad fits for him in terms of the personalities in there, in terms of maybe what the org or the other players, the big players, expected from him. And also, you look at some of the pieces he had. Like I always say, Huxley had JKS, Aleksib had Jax. Huxley had basically no coach or an analyst. Aleksib had Extaz, a massive name coach coming off a lot of online success and some LAN success, who's got a whole system he wants to play in, and that might not be the same as Aleksib. Then, forget about Nip. That was a train wreck from day one. He never got in a position to make it good. But there's another thing I'll say. I made this point about the AWP, and I'll put the TikTok in the link below. Just think about the AWPers he had. He never had an elite AWPer. Alu was above average, but not a top 20 player that year, despite loads of finals, winning tournaments. You had Mantu, who was a first-time AWPer, which is good, but not amazing. Then later, you had, in NIP, you had Headtrick. You had Monacy, first-time AWPer himself, even though he's very good. Then you had Headtrick, wasn't even an AWPer before that. He was a rifler. He briefly played AWP in Navi Academy at the end. And then was just getting used to the first land, speaking English, second language. Now he's got the old GOAT, the best player ever at killing with the AWP, and someone who doesn't need any micromanaging. It got simple. That's an elite AWPer. That's an elite player. That's the greatest player. So if he has Simple, I tell you right now, he's going to give him maximum freedom. He's going to let Simple do what he wants to do and have his read on the game. And it's like when Michael Jordan played for Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson would explain it to Michael Jordan, right? You can take any of these options in the triangle offensive text winter that I use. You can shoot whenever you want in theory. The system is there for the other players, so they know what to do. They know how to help you. They know what to do in response to what you're doing, and people aren't just stood around watching you play ball. So Simple can do whatever he wants in this team. The system's for the others, to help the others. And quite frankly, I want him at times to micro or focus on those players. Like when I look at JL's someone where you'll see if you listen to this Cuban reflections, yeah, he's someone, remember, who was an AWPer himself, and they switched him to the rifle. He's got good aim, but if you just see how he interacts and talks and plays a bit, he's brainless. He seems like a moron, quite frankly, in that Issa vein. So I hope that Aleksib is going to put focus into using this guy and tell him where to be and when to be and activating him and telling him what like little routes to follow. Then you got Bit. Yeah, Bit used to be a monster in 2021, right? In 2022, he was so underwhelming. That guy hasn't been a top player for ages now. He's just been whatever. And he looks lost in games because you know what? Blade can't talk during every round and tell him what to do. I hope Aleksib is going to give him some direction, put him in positions. Everyone said on CT side in 2021 when he was a monster, that's because Electronic and Simple would give him like tips during the round, like play more aggressive now, pull back a little bit. I hope that's what Aleksib can do for him. I also hope, by the way, with Immer to mix. I hope he has some direction so he knows what the tactic's going to be and the read that he's got on the defence. But I hope for him, he lets him get his own game going. Because when I've watched his POVs, this guy had good positioning. This guy had good awareness. Then again, he was playing with Shuey, that guy that we just said, Tosh, he claims, micros people around, etc. So I expect this to be potentially a very good lineup. Yes, it's a mishmash of players from all different teams and countries. You're all speaking second language English. You're in a scenario where how will they work on the blade system? They've never played together, these sorts of players, mix of cultures. And you've got to get it all going pretty quickly because it's a very explosive lineup where you figure it'll either work or it'll do really badly and they'll just cut people, right? But I expect big things. I think the potential is enormous. I think this is the potential. It's the highest potential for an Aleksib team since he joined G2. That lineup looked like it could work too on paper. Although I've heard they were a bit abusive with how they use Jax. Maybe that's what happens when you play with Eco, who knows? So I think, quite frankly, this whole micromanager thing is so overblown. It's a component of his game, it's a tendency of his, it's a skill set he has, but he doesn't just universally apply it to everyone. He doesn't blindly do it. And no, people on Reddit and HLTV don't understand the game and how to use these players better than Aleksib. There's a reason why in every single team he has results that are above what you'd expect, maybe with the exception of G2, and he still made the kind of Itse final there.
Yo, this is Alup. You got pretty big balls to watch Thorin's YouTube videos.
I've been pleasantly surprised during the time I've had my Patreon and my Patreon community, the Skrilluminati, by both the financial support they've provided and the moral support. And so this video was kindly supported and made possible by Starlust, Theo Buenzli, Ahmed Hadjou, Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Thooorin, Jensen Goh, Animosity, Tobias Bernasconi, Bot Pounder 420, Yurka 86, Tosh, and as always, you know it, a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Would you like to ask a question in one of those AMAs where I tend to go pretty in depth? Sometimes they even spin out into their own videos. Do you want teasers to find out who the upcoming guests are for the myriad of interviews that I do across esports? Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest. We have a channel on my Discord where you can do that if you're at the right tier. And of course, you could potentially take part in one of those lengthy esports discussions with me about whatever is on your mind in the scene. Well, if any of those perks sound tantalizing, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.